Hey, friend, welcome to Family Church at Home. It is so good to be connecting with you. Wherever you are in the right place. Today, you're going to hear a message from our children's pastor, Jessica, about Go Kids, and also a message from Pastor Curtis called Three Questions Everyone Has About God. So stay tuned. I'm so glad you're here. You don't want to miss a minute. But first, I'm going to ask you to do two things. First, just comment right now and let me know that you're watching. And second, share this message because it is for everyone. Thanks for being here. We're going to have a great day. welcome to Family Church at Home. And if you're new with us, I want to give a very special welcome to you. Let us know that you're watching with a comment, and we can hook you up with a free gift. Thank you for being here. We hope you enjoyed the service. We are a Jesus church, and you're going to hear the good news of Jesus. In the book of Matthew, it states a few times that everywhere Jesus went, he was proclaiming the good news. And this good news is for everyone. But we do have to respond to it. And my prayer for you today is that you will respond to that good news. Before we get started, I have a big question for you. We're coming up on a holiday, and I gotta know, what is your favorite firework? Comment right now and let me know, what do you enjoy the most on the 4th of July? Is it fountains, the artillery shells, snakes, smoke bombs, sparklers, black cats? I gotta see what type of firework is the winner, so let's see in the comments who gets the most votes. What's your favorite firework? Well, right now it's time for Go Kids, so let's go to Pastor Jessica.
Good morning, Go Kids. Check out my new book. I love search and find books. It makes me feel like a detective because the pictures have to match exactly. Nope, not it. Puzzles are like that too. You have to look at the clues, the shape of the piece and the colors on it to find where it goes. So how about you pretend to be detectives with me right now? I'm gonna give you some clues and you try to guess who I'm talking about. Okay, clue number 1, it's a woman. Clue number 2, she has brown hair. Any guesses yet? Clue number 3, she has brown eyes. Clue number 4, her favorite color is green. Those clues make it kind of difficult to guess who it is, right? You probably know a lot of girls with brown hair and brown eyes. Not all of them probably have the favorite color of green, but that still doesn't make it obvious who I'm talking about. But what if I gave you this clue? She is the children's pastor of Go Kids at Family Church. Now you know who it is, right? Me. My brown hair, brown eyes, and favorite color aren't what set me apart. In order for you to guess who I was talking about, I had to tell you what makes me different from other people. Our memory verse this week is, "It is written, be holy, because I am holy." 1 Peter 1:16. Can you say and do the motions with me? It is written, be holy, because I am holy. 1 Peter 1:16. So what exactly does holy mean? It doesn't mean it has a bunch of holes in it. Holy means perfect, sinless, and set apart. God is holy. He's perfect. He's sinless. He's not like any other person or thing. He is set apart. When you become a Christ follower, you reflect who God is. You become a mirror of God's holiness. That is why you are to be holy, because God is holy. Still have your detective hats on? Okay, here's another puzzle for you. Which one of these is Coke and which is Pepsi? It's hard to tell, isn't it? If they had labels on them, you could tell. Or could you? Maybe I switched their labels. You could taste them. But you might not get it right then either. But what if I asked you, which one of these is pop and which one is water? That's pretty obvious, isn't it? How are you different from the world? Is it obvious? Or would people have to really do some detective work? How you treat others when they make you mad or treat you poorly? How you talk to your parents and teachers? And saying no when your friends are doing something you know in your heart wouldn't please God are just a few ways to be set apart. On your own, these things would be impossible. But when God lives in you, He enables you to be holy. Your challenge this week is to ask God to enable you to be holy. talk with your parents and make a list of some things that you think reflects holiness. And as a family, pick one or two that you want to focus on. I hope to see you all detectives very soon.
Family Church is all about helping you take your next step on your faith journey. We want you to know God, find freedom, discover purpose, and make a difference. One area that many people struggle to find freedom is in their finances. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. And one answer might be getting on a budget. Now, sorry, I don't mean to go all Dave Ramsey on you, but another reason could be trusting God with your finances and putting Him first. There's incredible freedom that can come when you put God first with your money and your finances. I've experienced it in my own life. I've honestly gone from being a tightwad, a penny pincher. I would get in arguments with my family members about really small amounts of money, and I would consistently let finances bring strain and tension into my closest relationships. However, once I decided to truly put God first and follow what Jesus said when it came to money, Lauren and I were able to find freedom in this area, and now we consider it a privilege to be generous, and it's no longer an issue of contention. And God has truly blessed us tremendously in this area. You can give online at familychurch.xyz/give. Thank you for giving to Family Church. Your generosity is making a difference in our church and in the lives of so many in our community that we are able to help and bless. And I know God will bless your obedience, so thank you for giving. Our giving verse today is found in 2 Corinthians 8:7. It says, "But since you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in the love we have kindled in you, see that you also excel in the grace of giving." Well, I hope you're ready for a message, because I know God has something He wants to speak to you. So let's make some space, pray for God to give us ears to hear, and lean in. Here's Pastor Curtis with part 2 of 3 questions about God.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Family Church at Home. We're continuing a series we began last week where we're looking at some basic questions that many people have about God. And when it comes to questions, I think we can all identify with the frustration that comes when you don't get a correct or an adequate answer to an important question you have. Especially in this day and age when customer service has become so automated and you can't seem to talk to an actual person to answer your questions. And you're on the phone, you're getting frustrated, you quit going through the number options and you start in with the verbal, no, representative. And it's frustrating when you can't seem to get an answer to an important question that you've got. Perhaps the only thing more frustrating would be if you got an incorrect or bad answer to an important question that you had. Chances are many of you have been given a lame or incorrect answer to some questions you had about God. And that's unfortunate, because a lame or incorrect answer about God can lead to a lame or incorrect faith, or a faith that won't stand up against the trials and struggles that come with trying to navigate life in this messed up world. But beyond that, an incorrect answer about God leads to an uninspiring faith, a faith that doesn't really motivate you to press in closer to God. So my hope is that this series will provide more convincing answers to these important questions that people have about God. And in so doing, perhaps you'll consider or reconsider your relationship with God. Last week, the question that we answered was, who is He? Who is God? Because there's a lot of misrepresentation of God out in the world. And sadly, even in some segments of the church. It's true today, but it was also true in Jesus' day. In fact, Jesus' greatest opposition came from those who were misrepresenting God, which is why Jesus told His disciples that the best way to understand God is to view Him as a father. Not your earthly father, but your heavenly Father. About 30 years later, the Apostle Paul comes along and clarifies what Jesus was talking about when he said that we should view God as Abba, Father. And Abba is the most endearing term to use for father. It's better translated Papa or Daddy. And when we come to the place where we can view God in that way, that changes everything. So this week we're going to look at another question that many people have, especially if you happen to be a Jesus follower. But the question applies to everyone. Is it worth it? Is it worth serving God? Is it worth being a Jesus follower? And if you are a Jesus follower, I'm willing to bet that you can remember the first time that you realized following Jesus would cost you something. The first time you felt left out or on the outside looking in or embarrassed because of your decision to become a Christian. I remember where I was, who was with me, and what I was eating. It was that traumatic for me. I was with one of my roommates at the time. We were having lunch at Vista Restaurant on 6th Street in Lawrence, Kansas. That tells you how long ago it was, because that's been gone for many years. And I was eating a Vista Burger basket when some old high school acquaintances that I hadn't seen in a while came in. And when they saw me, they walked over and we talked for a little bit. And then one of them said, "Hey, Curtis, I heard you became real religious or something. Is that true?" For the next few seconds, I felt like I wanted to crawl underneath the table. I mean, I really didn't have a comeback to that. And even if I did, they wouldn't have stuck around long enough to hear it. I mean, how do you explain a radical life change from the inside out in a minute or less? But I just remember the sting of that statement, real religious or something, and how I didn't like that, how that made me feel at that moment. But come on, we've all experienced this. If you've been serving God for any amount of time at all, I'm sure you've experienced times where your decision to follow Him has cost you something. Times when following Jesus was unpopular. But you know, historically, following Christ has never been a popular thing to do. Or how about the times when following Christ was difficult? But again, following Christ has never been easy. Now, coming to Christ, that's easy. But Jesus never said, "Come to me," but He did say, "Follow me." And following Him includes things like loving one another, turning the other cheek, going the second mile. See, when God's will bumps up against our anger, our impatience, and our selfishness, that's when you realize that following Jesus will cost you something. Sometimes following Jesus can be unpopular. Sometimes it can be difficult. Sometimes it can even be inconvenient, like those times when expectations at work compromise your personal integrity. The point being, we've all experienced moments where following Jesus cost us something. And when they happen, it's an eye-opener, isn't it? I mean, no more Sunday morning warm fuzzies, no more hugs and smiles, graves into gardens, screeches to a halt mid-chorus, and reality sets in. Rationality sets in. Even a little bit of gut check sets in. And it's in those moments that you pondered this question: is it worth it? Is it worth it? Is it worth it to follow Jesus? I'm not talking about coming to Jesus. I'm talking about being all in when it comes to a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Is it worth it? Or does He require too much? And the reason why we need to answer this question is because if we don't have a convincing answer for that question, chances are our commitment to God is not what we think it is. That would also explain why we sometimes tend to waver in our faith. Where there's days when we're all in, but then there's days when we do wonder, man, is this really worth it? And before we know it, we become a percentage Christian, where we'll surrender certain things to God, but not everything, because we still have a few things that we think that we can handle better than God, or we just don't want to give them up. Or we become double-minded, where we act one way on Sundays and a different way through the rest of the week. See, dear ones, if we don't have a compelling answer to this question, is it worth it? I think it can make us sort of like a group of kids getting ready to take swimming lessons. During the summer months, there have been many mornings where I've been working here at the church, over here on the north side, doing some weeding or mulching in the flower beds, or weed eating, or picking up trash. And they'll have the swimming lessons going on across the street at the pool, at the city pool. So I've had plenty of opportunities to witness some bits and pieces of these kids taking these swimming lesson classes. And here's what I've discovered. Swim lesson classes are basically made up of three types of kids. The first group is the fearful or stubborn kid. They're the ones that kind of stand in the background, away from the pool a ways. They're standing there with their arms crossed, refusing to budge. If they're going to get in the pool, they're going to have to be dragged in there. Then you got the kid that's sort of on the edge. And I kind of mean that literally and figuratively. It's kind of like they want to get in the water, but they're not sure. So sometimes they'll actually come up and sit at the edge of the pool and put their feet in. So they're kind of peeking over the edge of the pool, trying to decide if this is something that they really want to do. And then you have the third group of kids, and this group has no fear and embraces the lessons. They're the ones who just go and jump in the water. So question, which group of kids learn to swim the fastest? Or here's another question. When it comes to your faith, which group are you in? Are you in the first group where it's going to take some more convincing than ever to get you in the pool? Is that where you're at? I mean, that's fine. I mean, we obviously would love for you to jump in with the rest of us. In fact, many of the changes that we've made here at this church were done with you in mind. But we get it. You know, you've got questions you're still trying to get answers to before you fully commit to God, and that's fine. In fact, this series was done with you in mind. So it's okay to be in that first group. And then there's probably some of you that are in that second group. There's a part of you that's intrigued by the idea of getting in the water, but then there's part of you that's still not sure. You know, you're sort of sitting on the edge of the pool, dangling your toes in now and then just to kind of get a feel for the situation, but you're still not ready to do what that third group of people are doing, which is running and jumping into the pool. But can I tell you this? Can I tell you that God, the God that we talked about last week, your Heavenly Father, really wants you to join that third group? Not only that, He'll make sure to catch you when you jump. But here's the deal. You have got to jump. You've got to trust that God will not let you go under. When it comes to your faith and following Jesus, that's what today's message is about. Challenging you to go all in, to just jump in. But it still comes back to this question, is it worth it? And if we don't have a convincing answer to that question, then chances are we'll always be standing or sitting on the edge of our relationship with God. Sometimes in, sometimes out, or worse, we'll stay in that first group that have allowed fear and unanswered questions to keep them from even giving God a chance in the first place. And so, in the same way that we let Jesus answer our first question last week, who is God? So also let's let Him help answering the second question this week, is it worth it? The context for this answer that Jesus gave was the tail end of a conversation that He had with His disciples one day. In fact, it came right after their conversation about how people viewed Him. So Jesus asked His disciples one day, so who do the people say that I am? And the disciples said, well, some say that you're a prophet, and some say you're Elijah, come back to life, and some say you're the Messiah. And Jesus stops them at one point and says, yeah, but who do you say that I am? And then right after that came Peter's confession, where he told Jesus, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And then Jesus tells Peter, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Then right after that, Matthew tells us that there was a shift in Jesus' ministry. And now here's how he worded it. In Matthew 16, beginning at verse 21. From that time, Jesus began to show His disciples that He must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed, and on the third day be raised. Now, this must have been quite puzzling for the disciples to hear. Because remember, at this point in Jesus' life and ministry, He's on a roll. I mean, there were huge, massive crowds following Him wherever He went, which meant the disciples were in the limelight as well. I mean, they were kind of like the rock stars too, since they were the ones closest to Jesus. So things are going well. Jesus is miraculously feeding and healing people. The crowds are growing larger and larger. Jesus occasionally raising someone from the dead. And then right in the middle of that, Jesus pulls His disciples aside and says, look, guys, things are going to start looking different now because I need to go to Jerusalem, suffer many things by the religious leaders, be crucified, and then I'll arise again 3 days later. Now put yourself in the disciples' place and imagine hearing Jesus telling you this. I mean, that'd be like you going to work tomorrow and your CEO or your boss or manager calling everyone together and saying, okay, everyone, listen up. Just letting you know that we're going to go to Topeka, and here's what's going to happen. I'm going to testify before a grand jury, and then I'm stepping down. Our stock prices are going to plummet. Our board of directors is going to quit. I'm going to prison, and all your jobs are going to be outsourced. So let's go. Let's do this. See, this is what the disciples are thinking. What are you talking about, Jesus? See, we know it rocked their cages because of Peter's response in verse 22. And Peter took him aside. Think about this. You know, pull the Messiah aside. Peter pulled him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, far be it from you, Lord. This shall never happen to you. I think only Peter could get away with pulling the Messiah aside and rebuking him, right? But you can understand Peter's reaction here, right? I mean, with all the momentum they had going at this time, all the healings and miracles, the furthest thing from their mind was the idea that Jesus would suffer and die. So from Peter's perspective here, basically what he told Jesus here was this: look, Jesus, I don't know where you came up with that plan, but we can't do that. In other words, what Peter told Jesus here was, it's not worth it, Jesus. It's not worth it. I mean, we can go to Jerusalem. You can go to Jerusalem if you want, but if they come after you, no way you're just going to let them take you, right? I mean, you're going to use your God powers to flick them aside and continue building your kingdom, right, Jesus? And Jesus' response to Peter is probably the harshest response that Jesus had towards anyone who wasn't a Pharisee or religious leader. In verse 23 says, but Jesus turned and said to Peter, get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man. You know, what I like about this passage is the fact that we can actually see Jesus standing in our shoes here. He's just revealed to his closest followers what God's plan to redeem mankind was going to look like, which totally caught them by surprise, which is understandable. And now one of Jesus' closest friends is questioning whether or not it's worth it to continue following him. And even though Jesus' response to Peter sounds pretty harsh, and rightly so, but remember, Jesus' mindset here, when Jesus told Peter, get thee behind me, Satan, here's what he was saying. He was telling Peter, look, I'm God the Son, sent by God the Father to suffer and die for the sins of the world, and then rise from the dead to release new life, abundant life to the world. This is my Father's plan for me, Peter. And I am all in. I'm not just 33% in. I'm not just 50% in. I'm not even just 75% in. I am all in, totally committed to this plan. So I know you mean well, Peter, but right now you're being influenced by Satan. So I've got to ask you to get out of the way because I'm all in on this. And at that point, Jesus does literally turn towards Jerusalem and goes all in. He walks towards the greatest work of God in all human history. And he ends up laying down his life. But before he does this, before he sets the example for his disciples, he teaches them. He pauses to help show them what it means to be all in with God and with God's plan for their life. He pauses to tell them what they're going to need to do what he's about to do. Jesus pauses for a moment to speak through history to you and to me to show us what we'll need to be fully committed to God and to God's plan for our lives. And what Jesus said in the next couple of verses is the point of this morning's message as we wrestle with the question, is it worth it? And if you'll embrace and walk in the principle and the truth of these next two verses, it will change the trajectory of your life. In verse 24 of Matthew 16, then Jesus told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Now keep in mind, the disciples had no idea what Jesus was talking about when he said this. We read this and we can connect those dots. We're looking back on that, right? We can connect those dots. Jesus denying himself, being beaten, slapped around, and then literally picking up a cross and carrying it up a hill outside of Jerusalem. We get it. But Jesus isn't talking about himself here. He's talking about them. He's talking about us. And he's talking about anyone who's considering following him. And he's saying this. He's saying, look, you need to know if you're considering following me, that's great. But you need to know that there's going to be times when it will absolutely cost you something to follow me. There will absolutely be times when it won't be popular to follow me. There'll be times when it won't be easy to follow me and when it won't be convenient to follow me. To which most people would respond with, okay, what else you got, Jesus? I mean, tell me again, Jesus, why should I follow you? I mean, you're keeping it real. Let me keep it real. Why would anyone sign up for that? Why would anyone willingly choose to take up a cross and deny themselves? What's appealing about going all in, about jumping into the deep end with that, Jesus? Nah, I'll take a hard pass. I think I like it here, sitting on the edge, dangling my toes in the water. I kind of like this percentage relationship thing I've got with God. Why would we sign up for that, Jesus? Well, Jesus actually tells us why in the next verse. But it's a little cryptic sounding. Let's read it in verse 25, Matthew 16. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. You know, many years ago we had a dog named Marley. I guess technically it was our daughter's dog, but she stayed with us, so we claimed her. And Marley was a really good dog. We referred to her as our Oklahoma white trash dog because we rescued her from a sketchy-looking double wide on the outskirts of Marlow, Oklahoma, and brought her up here to God's country. So she was a very grateful dog. Not long after we got Marley back home, we went and got her a dog toy to play with and chew on. This isn't it, but this could be it. It looked very similar to it. Marley was a great fetch dog, and I loved playing fetch with her. And she loved going and fetching it and bringing it back and eventually dropping it, but only after she had sufficiently chewed whatever it was in her mouth till it was sufficiently dead before she'd drop it. So I had this toy and I played with Marley a lot. Well, fast forward a few months and Marley's dog toy is moving past the pungent stage to the don't even want to touch it stage. So one day while shopping for some dog food, I walked past the pet toys and there was this real bright orange colored rope with a knot at each end. Again, this wasn't it, but this looked real similar to it. And it had a little squeaky toy on one end and a bell on the other end. And I'm looking at this thinking, I'll bet Marley would love this. So I buy it. We get home and I'm ready for the reveal of Marley's new, way cool and better smelling toy. And I pull it out and I call Marley, "Come here, Marley, come here." And I hear some footsteps coming down the hallway, click, 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 click. She hits the corner and slides, and she runs into the front room, and guess what she has in her mouth? Her old, nasty, pungent, torn, and frayed toy. So I start pleading with her, "Drop it, Marley, drop it. Come on, Marley, drop it." And it finally dawns on me, I'm going to have to pry that thing out of her mouth. She was not going to drop it. Dear ones, that's what Jesus meant here, that the life he has to give us is so much better than the life we're holding on to, that we think is so important, so great, and so precious. Jesus is saying that every one of his commands, every one of his rules, every time he corrects or rebukes us, every single step he invites us to take with him has a single purpose, and that is to give us life. Life. Not just life, but life to the fullest extent possible. That's the invitation of Jesus Christ to all of us this morning. He's presenting us with a brand spanking new life. A better looking life, a better smelling life. He's reaching out to us with this, and here we stand, stubbornly holding on to this, not wanting to let go our old, stinky, ripped and torn, frayed life. And that puts us in a quandary, doesn't it? Because we can't have both. This divine design, this divine plan was set up in a way that you can't hold on to both. The only way that we'll ever be able to take hold of the new life is if we let go of the old one. In other words, this will cost you something. So what are you going to do? What part of the swimming lessons crowd are you in? Because you can continue to hold on to your life. Right? You can play it safe on the outskirts of the pool, or you can play the percentage game, come and sit at the edge of the pool and dangle your feet over and dip your toes in when it's convenient for you, and then take them back out whenever you want. You can take turns alternating between toys. You can play with that one and play with this one, but you can't have both. You can't have both. Some of you are right there now. You're trying to play with both. But here's what God wants you to know. To the extent that we hold on to this, we're going to miss out on this. If we try to save our old life, we'll miss out on the new life. And that's a really, really huge deal, folks. So let me leave you with this question. How much of your life do you want to settle for this? How many areas of your life are you willing to settle for this little old toy when you could have this brand spanking new one? How many stages of your life are you willing to keep chasing and fetching this old stinky toy when you could have this new one? Here's what God wants you to know today. The moment you find your life is the moment you lose it to Jesus. And I'm telling you, this statement is true no matter what you think or believe about God. Agnostic, atheist, doesn't matter. The moment you lose the life you're holding on to is the moment you discover the new life in Jesus, the one that he died to offer us. That's not just a cryptic, poetic statement. It really is true. And I challenge anyone to just begin to apply the basic principles that Jesus taught on a daily basis and see if before long your life isn't better. I know it will be, because that's what Jesus does. He makes our life better, and he makes us better at life. But keep saying yes to Jesus, because the moment we lose our life at any level of maturity is the moment we begin to grow into more abundant life. Because abundant life, listen, abundant life is a journey, not a destination. Don't ever stop losing your life to Jesus, because he's never finished inviting you into more of his life. That, dear ones, is why it's worth it. So remember, the next time you encounter a situation where it feels like it's costing you something to follow Jesus, just remember, it's because Jesus is trying to pry your fingers away from this old toy so that you can pick this one up. Let me pray for you. However you feel comfortable praying, I would like for you to just talk to God just like you'd be talking to me, only direct it to God and say, God, I'm in. I'm all in. I do believe that my life is found the moment I lose it to you, so I'm in. I'm tired of hanging out on the outskirts of the pool. I'm getting bored with sitting on the edge, dangling my toes in now and then. I'm ready to run and jump in. Cannonball right into your arms, Jesus. Into that new life, into that life to the fullest. So I'm all in, Jesus. Go ahead and just tell him that. Heavenly Father, I'm all in. Help me to let go completely of that old life so I can grab on to the abundant life that you have for me. A life that you purchased by dying for me and rising from the dead. So thank you, Lord, I'm all in. And help me to experience life like I never have before by choosing to follow you like I never have before. Now, one last thing. If you did decide to jump in this morning, would you do me a favor and text me or send me a message on Facebook and let me know that? Because I'd really like to pray for you and encourage you in taking your next step of faith. Thanks again, everyone, for watching this morning. I hope you're encouraged and blessed, and may the rest of your day be blessed as well.
Hey everyone, I want to share part of my story with you this morning, how God has shown himself faithful in my life. I grew up a preacher's kid, attending church every week, multiple times a week at that. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a home full of love and a whole lot of Jesus. I learned the famous Bible stories from a young age, the songs, hand motions that went with them, you name it. Despite being inundated with stories of God's faithfulness since before I could remember, I never truly surrendered the throne of my heart to Jesus. Repeatedly, I allowed something else to take that seat. I think with a little aging and reflection, there are some things about myself I began to better understand that helped me understand why I've made some of the poor choices I've made in my life. First, I'm a people pleaser and a follower. Second, I'm an Enneagram 3, driven, success-oriented, and image-conscious. With that in mind, as a kid, I was always striving to be the best at something, whether it was sports, relationships, academics, etc. Something always would capture my time and attention, and ultimately the throne of my heart. Unfortunately, Jesus wasn't one of those things. I went to church and would inconsistently spend time in the Word, but I thought I needed to be in control of my life, and nobody was going to make that happen besides me. By God's grace, I never had a Damascus Road experience in my life per se. There was no shortage of selfish decisions I made in my college years that probably should have led to one, but God was so patient with me and ultimately so faithful. Slowly over time, it seemed like the scales began to come off my eyes and I began to see his hand on my life in every season looking back. Opening doors, closing doors, making a way, protecting me from unwise choices I had made, and on and on. I felt like he began to show me how it was him all along. I thought it was me that earned the accolades or got the 4.0 or got accepted into the program I wanted to get into and so on. But he began to show me how he wanted to bless me and he wanted to use me. I felt like over time he said, I need you to surrender. It's time for me to have the throne of your heart. Just trust me. My yoke is easy. You don't have to bear this burden on your own. There's a saying we like to use in our next class here at church that says the two most important days in your life are the day that you are born and the day you find out why. I think God has wired each of us with unique characteristics, attributes, and skill sets. They're a gift to be used for His kingdom and for His glory. Even though many of my quote-unquote successes were born out of selfish ambition and my own heart, God in His faithfulness used them to bring glory to His name. I wish I could tell you that Jesus' place on the throne of my heart has never again been rivaled, but that would be far from the truth. There's no shortage of idols that tend to creep in and compete for my time, attention, and adoration. I feel like the enemy understands how we are wired, and he likes to use that against us to feed us lies. For me, surrender is a daily choice. Guarding my heart is a daily choice. Consistently spending time with Jesus and reading His Word has been vital in keeping my eyes fixed on Him and keeping my intentions pure. I promise you, His plans for your life are so much better than you can imagine. He wants to blow your mind and exceed all of your expectations, but He has to have the throne of your heart. For way too long, I took turns alternating between the toys like my dad illustrated in his message. You don't want to miss out on the new life that God is calling to you. Say yes to Jesus this morning and the abundant life that He has prepared for you. You will be forever thankful that you did. I know for sure that I am.
It takes incredible faith because you don't always know what's going to happen when you jump in, when you take that next step. But when you have that faith and that trust, your trust is fully in God, that's when the abundant life God has planned for each of us begins and starts to take off. We would love to stay connected with you, so if you have a story to share, if Church at Home has encouraged you, has blessed you, has made a difference in your life, let us know. Send us a Facebook message or go to our website and contact us. We would love to hear from you and celebrate what God is doing in your life. Thank you for being here. We love you and we hope you have a great week. See you next time.